A lot of people think Ice Cube was just another rapper talking tough, but he wasn't pretending. He actually lived that life. And Suge Knight, he found out the hard way. This was the same Ice Cube who wasn't scared to throw hands at a public event when things got heated. From going face to face with Suge in a real fight.
See Suge and Ice Cube fight? Also, I see a ruckus, and I just see, Cube's throwing his fist. He wasn't punking out at all.
To boldly speaking his mind about him.
If he didn't know he got poked, then the conspiracy lives on.
Would you put it past
I don't
Suge?
push as nobody.
Cube never backed off for a second. Let's break down the wild story of Ice Cube versus Suge Knight. Back in the day, Suge Knight had a reputation that gave everyone chills. He was the so-called boogeyman of hip-hop. Artists didn't just avoid him, they were genuinely scared to cross him.
They was not scared of Suge Knight. They was terrified of Suge Knight.
Right.
I mean, terrified.
I know.
No. To death.
But Ice Cube wasn't one of those people. He carried himself with confidence, never letting fear take over. A lot of folks questioned Cube's street cred, saying he was just acting like a gangster for the music. But the truth? Cube came straight from that environment and was lucky enough to make it out alive. He's even shared stories that show just how close he was to that dangerous lifestyle. One time, Cube said a local guy who was deep into drugs showed up at his house, spinning lies to his mom just to get some cash. Shockingly, she handed the man 20 bucks.
Was heavy on drugs, went around to my house and gave my mother some cockamamie story, so she gave him $20.
That set Cube off. Furious, he and a friend decided to confront the guy. They even grabbed their weapons and went looking for him. But when they reached his place, the man wasn't home.
And I was so mad. You violated me and my family. Me and my friends was going around the corner to kill him. And he wasn't home, so thank God.
And that moment probably saved both their lives. Looking back, Ice Cube admits that moment was a real blessing in disguise. He knows that if that guy had been home, life could have turned out way different, and he might not be the Ice Cube we all know today.
We were young and we was mad, and we had a weapon, and it was gonna happen. So it would have been stupid, and I wouldn't be sitting here if it did.
One big reason Cube managed to leave that life behind was his dad. Unlike a lot of his friends growing up, Cube had a solid father figure who kept him grounded and pushed him towards something better. That guidance, mixed with the doors that music opened for him, gave him a way out.
We grew up in a pretty tough neighborhood, but nobody was tougher than my father, so it was a sense of security.
But don't get it twisted. Just because he stepped away from the streets didn't mean he lost his edge. And that's exactly why even Suge Knight, one of the most intimidating men in hip-hop, eventually had to go head-to-head with Cube. DJ Premier once revealed that he actually saw Cube and Suge squaring up. It happened not long after Cube left NWA, when Suge was already earning his name as one of the most feared people in the business. But according to Premier, Cube didn't flinch.
Did you really see Suge and Ice Cube fight? Also, I see a ruckus, and I just see, Cube's throwing his fist. He wasn't punking out at all.
He stood his ground and looked Suge right in the eye. That says everything, because back then, Suge had the entire industry on edge. This was a man known for backing up every word he said. He wasn't just talk. He had real connections, surrounded himself with serious people, and made sure his threats carried weight.
Suge Knight is a mythical figure.
The controversial CEO of Death Row Records.
The most feared figure in all of hip-hop.
His size was intimidating.
Knight had been on probation for a 1992 assault on two aspiring rappers.
Just ask Jerry Heller. He'll tell you exactly how intense Suge could get. Heller, who played a major role in NWA's history, once flat out called Suge pure evil.
You look at Suge Knight as an infection?
Well, Suge Knight is just evil, and that's what evil does.
And honestly, he had a reason to say that. During the famous Dr. Dre contract dispute, Mob James, one of Suge's top guys at the time, said when they showed up to demand Dre's release from Ruthless Records, Jerry Heller froze on the spot. The man was terrified. Jerry Heller was frozen in his chair, literally couldn't move.
So you're not even in the room?
No.
So, but Jerry's in the room with this big Suge Knight guy.
Just them two. Suge got a check out of him, and he got Dre's.
But that wasn't even the scariest part. Right after that confrontation, his house was broken into. A bunch of his stuff disappeared, but what really messed him up was the chilling message spray painted across his mirror.
Your house was vandalized. Your life was threatened. Right. What were some of the incidents today? I mean, didn't you come home one time and found out that your house was broken into?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff missing, and on the wall was spray painted, on the mirror in one of the bedrooms was spray painted, "Payback's a motherfucker, Jerry," or "Payback's a bitch, Jerry." You know, one of those things.
Nobody could prove Suge had anything to do with it, but Heller was convinced, and from that moment on, he was never the same. He became so paranoid that just hearing Suge's name was enough to make him panic.
You know, I always felt that that Suge had something to do with it.
Albert Hughes, one of the Hughes brothers who directed Menace to Society, once shared a wild story about this. He said that one day he casually mentioned Suge's name around Jerry, just joking around, and Jerry instantly freaked out. In a panic, he even pulled a gun on Albert's brother. That's how much fear Suge Knight had put into him.
Because we had big mouths and we would say what was on our mind, we said something to Jerry, but it was all in jest. And he literally pulls out a 25 and points it at my brother.
A gun?
Like, yeah, like,
really?
What you say?
And the truth is, Heller wasn't the only one who felt that kind of pressure. Suge had the entire music scene walking on eggshells. But Ice Cube? Nah, he wasn't built like the rest. Cube was cut from a different cloth, someone who refused to be bullied or intimidated. Suge could scare just about anyone, but Ice Cube wasn't one of them. And that confidence, it wasn't new. Cube had already dealt with major beefs before, even with groups that were once close to him. Take his clash with Above the Law, for example. After Cube split from NWA, Eazy-e signed the Pomona-based group to Ruthless Records, and naturally, they inherited the tension.
Me and Cube had some issues. He disrespected Pomona. Me and him got into a head-up scrap. Spilled over to the New Music Seminar.
Things started heating up around 1990, right when Above the Law was pushing their debut album, Living Like Hustlers. During an interview with the LA Times that April, one of the group members, KMG, threw some shade at Cube, questioning his street cred.
We had an interview with the LA Times. What signatures y'all music and everything. So like we talk about what we really was involved with or our colleagues.
That single comment turned up the temperature fast, and it wouldn't be long before words turned into something much bigger. So here's where things got spicy. One of the members from Above the Law claimed that Ice Cube's hardcore lyrics weren't really his own stories, that they were actually inspired by their lifestyle.
We're not like Ice Cube that went away to college and come back and act like this big-time gangster in NWA, which at the time, that's what he was. You know, he was a dude that was really sharp with the pen, was kind of a schoolboy, never hustled the street, never banged in the street.
That jab didn't sit right with Cube. He didn't take it too personally, but he was definitely not about to just let it slide. Instead of going off, he clapped back with style. He fired a slick line saying new cats from Pomona should only talk about the 10 freeway, calling out the highway that runs through their city.
LA Times wanted to reply to that. On the interview, he said New Jack from Pomona should only talk about the freeway because that's the only thing that's going through that mother.
That response was sharp. It hit just the right nerve. When that interview dropped, Eazy-e wasted no time stirring things up. He reportedly called up Code 187 the leader of Above the Law, and asked him, "Did you read the paper?" The moment 187 saw what Cube said, he was heated.
Eazy-e called me. He said, "Hey man, did you get the LA Times?" I said, "No, man, you gotta see it." He laughing on the phone. He's a big joke, so he laughing. Ah! So I get it, I read the statement.
He told Eazy-e straight up that he planned to confront Cube face to face. Eazy tried to calm him down, but 187 wasn't having it.
I called E back and said, "I'm your boy up." As soon as I see, "Oh, cuz, don't be tripping." I said, "Man, that." Real, homie.
And fate must have been watching, because he didn't have to wait long for that moment. That very same night, April 7th, 1990, Above the Law was headlining a show at the Anaheim Celebrity Theater. Ice Cube just happened to be there too, doing a magazine interview backstage in the hallway. Before long, he and 187 crossed paths and exchanged a few tense words, but it didn't pop off immediately.
So he come, me and meet up in the hallway, said, "What's up there?" She said, "Newspaper. You trying to play me like a buster or something, homie?" Like, you dude. Like I said, "What's happening? You want to get down?"
Later that night, though, Cube walked right into Above the Law's dressing room and confronted 187 at the doorway. That was the spark. Just like that, fists started flying.
So he come back into my dressing room and say, "What's up?" Soon as he say, what's up? I give him to him a 2-piece hot one. Boom, he fall through the door.
The fight got rough, but Cube stood his ground the entire time. He wasn't backing down, not even for a second, and made it clear that nobody was gonna push him around. The fight eventually cooled off, but the tension, that was far from over.
So Cube didn't back down either.
No, he didn't. He didn't back down. He got socked out, but he didn't back down. He got socked out, but he didn't back down.
By this point, Ice Cube wasn't rolling solo anymore. He had his own crew, the Lynch Mob, and this wasn't just some group of rappers. They were activists, street savvy, and the kind of people you really didn't want to test.
And when we get to New York, so all the stuff going around the seminars like, oh yeah, the Lynch Mob here, and they got issues, whatever, right?
So when Cube and Above the Law crossed paths again at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square during the 1990 New Music Seminar, everyone knew it was only a matter of time before things got heated.
We see each other going to a panel, right? And then we face off right in the middle of the seminar, and we get down. And all hell broke loose.
Cube had stepped away to speak on a panel, but his crew was still there holding it down. A few words got exchanged, voices got louder, and before long, boom, another fight broke out between the Lynch Mob and Above the Law.
Cube was nowhere around. Nowhere around. We tore that whole floor up.
It was intense, chairs flying, fists swinging, the kind of scene that made everyone in the building nervous. But when it was over, Cube's crew made sure that message was clear. Don't mess with Ice Cube. After that, Cube seemed unbothered. His reputation was solidified. He'd proven once again that he wasn't the one to play with. But the story doesn't stop there, because next up came a totally different kind of battle. Cube's next feud wasn't about fists, it was about bars. On September 27th, 1994, a young rapper known as Common Sense dropped a track that would go down in hip-hop history and spark a serious clash. The song was called I Used to Love H.E.R., one of the standout singles from his second album, Resurrection. In it, Common used the metaphor of a woman he fell for to represent his love for hip-hop itself. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the girl he's talking about is hip-hop, how it started pure and how it changed over time. The track hit deep, especially with East Coast fans who appreciated that raw storytelling vibe. Many of them hadn't really connected with his debut album, Can I Borrow a Dollar?
I met this girl when I was 10 years old, and what I love most, she had so much soul.
But this song changed that. Still, not everyone was feeling the message. The track described hip-hop's shift from its roots into a more commercial, gangster-influenced sound. It was a clever metaphor, but to some people, especially on the West Coast, it sounded like shade. Ice Cube took it personally. To him, it felt like Common was calling out the West Coast dominance in the 90s.
Created I Used to Love It in 1994. You know, it was a story that I could tell about the evolution of hip-hop and the stages that I seen hip-hop go from just the pure innocence.
He talking about this girl that he was in love with. You know, she's supposed to be hip-hop, and he's so in love with her. But when she go out here, she get
Word started spreading fast, rumors flying that Ice Cube wasn't happy about it. And soon enough, Common heard through the grapevine that Ice Cube had fired back with a response track of his own.
T from the West Coast, and somebody said, yo, Cube dissed you on this song. So we playing the song, and I'm listening, I'm like, damn, this dissing me.
That's when things really started to boil over. The verse King T was talking about came from Ice Cube's feature on Mac 10's track, West Side Slaughterhouse, which also had WC on it. That song hit hard, and Common didn't waste any time responding. He came swinging with a fiery diss track, and that's how the beef between Ice Cube and Common officially kicked off. Common came for Cube with sharp bars like went from gangster to Islam to the D of Daz FX, calling Cube out for supposedly switching sides, first aligning with the East Coast, then turning his back on it.
Lying on your said you was use higher learning. Don't take my word.
But that wasn't all. He kept pushing deeper, dropping lines like, hypocrite, I'm filling out your death certificate, slinging bean pies and St. Ides in the same sentence. Common was basically accusing Cube of being out of sync with the Nation of Islam's values, while still promoting street life in his music.
Take the nation in millions to hold me back from giving you mouth shots or hit.
And to top it all off, Common ended his verse with a cold mic drop moment, flipping
flipping Cube's own words against him with, in the immortal words of one Ice Cube, a is a
Any last words before I hit the switch from the immortal words of one? A is a...
It was a lyrical jab that made everyone stop and pay attention. Now for Cube, this was unfamiliar territory. He'd always been known as one of the most fearless diss track artists in the game. His brutal takedown of NWA with no Vaseline was already the stuff of legend, pure fire. And as producer Doug Infinite said, if you gonna come at Cube lyrically, you better come correct or he's gonna body you. That's how serious Cube's reputation was. But this time around, fate stepped in before things could spiral out. Cube later admitted he actually wrote a response track aimed right at Common, but before he could drop it, the world changed.
I had a record, man, that was a killer. And then we ended up having this summit with Farrakhan.
Oh.
He helped us squash it. He helped us squash it, so I just never did my record.
You recorded it?
No, I had the lyric.
The tragic deaths of Tupac Shakur in 1996 and the notorious B.I.G. in 1997 shook hip-hop to its core, forcing everyone to rethink the constant beefs and violence. On April 3, 1997, less than a month after Big E's passing, Minister Louis Farrakhan brought together some of hip-hop's biggest names for a peace summit at the Nation of Islam's headquarters in Chicago. It was a powerful moment in hip-hop history. Both Common and Ice Cube attended, putting an official end to their feud right then and there. But peace wouldn't last forever, because up next came one of the most infamous feuds in rap history, Ice Cube versus NWA. Everyone knows the story. Cube left NWA in 1989 over money disputes. He felt he wasn't getting paid fairly for all the writing he did on Straight Outta Compton, and that led to a nasty fallout that turned friends into enemies. The beef got ugly. It didn't just stay between the artists. It dragged in people who weren't even part of the drama. One of the most famous examples was D. Barnes, the host of Fox TV's Pump It Up, a popular hip-hop show that spotlighted rap culture and major artists of the era. Years later, even Eminem referenced her in Guilty Conscience when he mentioned Dre's attack on her. But how did D get caught in the crossfire? Well, by the time Cube's issues with NWA exploded, she'd already interviewed the crew multiple times. She knew them all well.
Ice Cube of NWA will be hanging out with him and all his homies at his house.
We'll be back after these commercials or breaks or cuts or whatever.
Whatever. Don't go anywhere.
Dre, Eazy-e, Cube, everyone, and her show often gave them major screen time. But one interview would end up changing everything, sparking one of the most controversial moments in hip-hop TV history. Once Ice Cube left NWA, everything changed. The crew didn't take his departure lightly. They came right for him. NWA fired back with their diss track, 100 Miles and Running, making it crystal clear they weren't just gonna let Cube walk away without catching some heat.
According to D. Barnes herself, when she invited NWA back on Pump It Up to talk about their latest projects, the vibe was tense from the jump. Every time she asked a question, one of them found a way to throw shade at Cube. It was like every sentence turned into a shot. The tension was so thick that the production team had to cut out some of the harshest moments just to make the interview suitable for TV. But here's where things really got messy. When the episode finally aired, it didn't just feature the NWA segment, it also included another clip that was filmed earlier on the set of Boys in the Hood, where rapper Yo-Yo was being interviewed. Out of nowhere, Ice Cube showed up during that taping and used the moment to fire shots back at NWA, flipping their own lyrics on them and turning their words into a clever diss right on camera. And that wasn't all. Cube even made jokes about the DOC, who was close to Dr. Dre and had recently survived a car accident that tragically damaged his voice.
Cube won't pump it up. I got all suckers 100 miles and one. Like give a shout out to the DLC. Y'all can play.
That moment hit hard for fans and stirred up even more controversy. Now, D. Barnes later said she didn't think that segment should have aired, but as just the show's presenter, the decision wasn't up to her. She didn't have control over the final edit, and unfortunately, the way it was cut made everything look worse. When the final version hit TV screens, the episode played the two clips back to back, the NWA interview right next to Ice Cube's fiery comments. And to close the segment, D turned to the camera and said, "I'm always in the middle of controversy."
D always in the middle of controversy, man. Pump it up.
It was just a quick offhand remark meant to lighten the mood, but in the final cut, it looked like she was stirring the pot. That simple edit made it seem like she was intentionally fueling the beef between Ice Cube and NWA, putting herself right in the center of one of hip-hop's biggest rivalries. Viewers didn't realize it at the time, but that moment would set off a chain reaction that changed everything for her, and it wouldn't take long before the fallout hit hard. After that Pump It Up episode aired, things simmered for a bit, but the fallout was far from over. Sometime later, Dr. Dre and D. Barnes ended up at the same Def Jam Records party. Reports say Dre had been drinking heavily that night, and when he spotted D across the room, all that pent-up anger over how the interview had been edited came rushing back. According to a Rolling Stone report by journalist Alan Light, things took a dark turn. Witnesses claimed that Dre lost control and physically assaulted D. Barnes in a shocking and violent outburst. It was an incident that left the entire hip-hop world stunned. Security reportedly had to step in to stop things from going any further, and the situation quickly became one of the most talked about scandals in rap history. D managed to escape and get to safety, but the damage, both physical and emotional, was done.
They grabbed me by my hair and started slamming me up against the wall. It's a painful and traumatic experience.
The attack became public knowledge almost instantly, sparking outrage and dividing the industry. What made it even worse was that some members of NWA didn't initially condemn what happened. In later interviews, a few of them made comments that seemed to downplay the seriousness of the assault, something that would come back to haunt them in the years that followed.
The person, the host of that show, did something that she knows she did and got beat down, and I hope it happened again.
Dr. Dre himself later addressed the situation, saying that he deeply regretted his actions and took full responsibility. In later interviews, he publicly apologized to D. Barnes and all the women he had hurt or disrespected during that time, admitting that his behavior back then was wrong. The lawsuit D filed against him, originally for over $22 million, was eventually settled privately, but the incident remains one of the most disturbing moments tied to that era of hip-hop history. Years later, Dre would reflect on it again, saying, "It's something I still regret. I was young, I was stupid, and I made a terrible mistake." That honesty helped bring closure to a painful chapter, but the memory of that night still lingers as a reminder of how wild and out of control the industry could get in those days. But even with all that controversy, Ice Cube was still dealing with his own waves of drama. The next major feud he found himself in? Cypress Hill. This one started in the mid-90s over something that should have been simple, a movie soundtrack. Ice Cube had curated the Friday soundtrack, which featured the track Roll It Up, Light It Up, Smoke It Up by Cypress Hill. The group had happily contributed the song, but according to Be Real, things got complicated after that. During a studio session, Ice Cube reportedly heard another Cypress Hill track called Throw Your Set in the Air. He loved the sound, but that admiration soon turned to tension when the group later accused Cube of lifting parts of their song's hook and flow for his own track, Friday. What started as a friendly collaboration suddenly spiraled into one of the most unexpected beefs in the West Coast. The misunderstanding grew, and soon both sides were firing off subliminal shots in interviews and records. It became a battle not about violence, but about respect and ownership in hip-hop. While Ice Cube was going through tracks for the Friday movie soundtrack, he got an early listen to Cypress Hill's upcoming album, Temples of Boom. The group played him their soon-to-be hit single, Throw Your Set in the Air. Cube instantly loved it. The beat, the hook, the whole vibe. He thought it would be perfect for the movie soundtrack. But there was just one problem. That song was supposed to headline Cypress Hill's next album. Cube asked if he could use it, but the group respectfully said no, it was off limits. He even pressed a bit, asking them to play it again, clearly feeling the track's energy. They did, but they stood firm. Throw Your Set in the Air was staying on Temples of Boom.
You know, we play him the song and he likes it. He goes, yeah, that's perfect, you know. Me and Muggs ask him, hey man, we got a couple of tracks from the album, you want to hear it?
We played him a song called Throw Your Set in the Air. And he was like, oh, that's banging. Can I get that for the movie instead?
They're like, man, we'd love to give it to you, but this is gonna be the single on our album.
Fast forward a bit to the release of the Friday soundtrack, which dropped right before Temples of Boom. That's when things took a turn. One of B Real's friends gave him a call out of the blue, saying, yo, did you let Ice Cube use one of your new songs for the Friday soundtrack? Confused, B Real said no, explaining they'd only given Cube the track Roll It Up, Light It Up, Smoke It Up. But the friend wasn't talking about that one. He said there was another song that sounded way too close to Throw Your Set in the Air. Skeptical but curious, B Real gave Cube's Friday theme song a listen and his stomach dropped. The hook sounded nearly identical to their own track. The lyrics were slightly changed, but the flow, rhythm, and melody were strikingly similar. To B Real, it didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like someone had borrowed from their work without credit.
The Throw Your Set in the Air thing. I said, no, we didn't give him that. He goes, well, that is in his chorus in his song.
Feeling betrayed, B Real vented his frustration in the studio, and as word spread, it quickly reached Ice Cube through Mac 10. Cube then picked up the phone to call B Real directly, trying to smooth things over. He insisted it was all a big misunderstanding, saying he hadn't meant to copy their track. The two talked it out, and for a while things seemed cool again. But the peace didn't last long. Not long after, Cube invited B Real to the studio to record a guest verse for Caution, a group signed under Cube's own Lynch Mob records. Everything seemed chill until B Real caught something strange. While listening to one of Cube's new tracks, he heard a few lines that sounded almost identical to lyrics from Temples of Boom. That's when B Real realized this issue wasn't over, it was just getting started. The trust between them was cracking, and what began as a friendly misunderstanding was quickly turning into one of the most talked about creative disputes in West Coast hip-hop. B Real couldn't believe it. Was Ice Cube really lifting from them again? As he listened closer, his suspicion grew stronger. It was almost like Cube had borrowed a few lines straight from Cypress Hill's playbook. And the wild part? Cube seemed to notice B Real's reaction. When he stepped out of the room for a minute and came back, those familiar lines had suddenly disappeared from the song. To B Real, that was all the proof he needed. Cube had been caught red-handed.
And I heard a couple lines that were the same things I used on the Temple of Boom record. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, that's my line.
That moment was the final straw for Cypress Hill. B Real went straight back to his crew, broke down what happened, and they decided it was time to clap back, hard. Soon after, they dropped No Rest for the Wicked, a brutal diss track aimed directly at Ice Cube. It didn't hold back one bit. The lyrics were sharp, personal, and full of fury. And once that track hit the streets, things got heated fast. The feud between Ice Cube and Cypress Hill became one of the biggest stories in West Coast hip-hop. Fans picked sides, artists chimed in, and the tension in LA's rap scene grew even thicker. What had started as a simple misunderstanding about a song turned into a war of pride and respect. But the drama didn't stop there. Around that same time, Cube got tangled up in another issue, this time involving Calm and Solo, who were in a messy business dispute with him. Things finally exploded when Cube and Solo unexpectedly crossed paths at a traffic light in Los Angeles. According to Solo, the situation got physical fast. He claimed in the scuffle he actually got the better of Cube, and somehow Cube's chain ended up in Solo's hands. Not one to miss an opportunity, Solo later showed up at a Cypress Hill concert at the House of Blues, holding Cube's chain high in the air for the crowd to see. The audience went wild, cheering, snapping photos, and spreading the story like wildfire. That image of Solo holding Cube's chain became one of the most infamous moments in 90s rap beef history.
Came back up, whooped on his ass. Somehow his chain fell in my hand. I don't know how it got in my hand, but it fell in my hand.
Eventually, though, cooler heads prevailed. Both Ice Cube and Cypress Hill decided to put the feud to rest, ending one of the most intense rivalries of the era. Time passed, and both sides moved on to focus on their music and legacy. What could have stayed ugly actually became another unforgettable chapter in hip-hop history, a reminder that even the biggest names can clash, make peace, and keep the culture alive. If you made it this far, show some love. Hit that like button, subscribe for more wild hip-hop stories, and drop a comment below. Whose side were you on back then? And don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves old school rap drama as much as you do.